Welcome everybody to Quarantine Break. I'm Kiana Martin, founder of Eat Soccer, and I'm so excited to have with us Danielle Berman. She has made it her mission to help athletes tackle what's next off the field, and we are so excited to have her teach us about what life is like as, I would consider, a sports consultant, but just someone who is working to make the world a better place for athletes beyond the game. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to catch up and chat about what I'm doing.
So to kick off our conversation, can you tell our students, what does a consultant do, and how does your consulting play an important role in helping athletes off of the field?
Yeah, so I define a consultant as almost like an advisor. So a company or a person will bring a consultant on to chat or help with a specific project or a specific goal. So in marketing, it could be media, it could be like what I do, athlete career transition or philanthropy. It's a specific area, and the consultant's role is to come in and provide resources, knowledge, or expertise in that space. And so what I do in my role as a consultant is I work with athletes to help them achieve their goals outside of sport. Obviously, athletes have lots of people that support them in their sport, from coaches to trainers to, team front office and all of those kinds of people. But once they leave sports, or when they're trying to work on things outside of sports, they don't always have that support system or consultant that they can work with. And so that's really the gap that my company tries to fill with Tackle What's Next, is to be that person or people that can help them find their way, find their goals, and achieve what they want to achieve.
What was your first introduction to sports? And at what point did you realize that this was going to become a part of your life's work?
So I played sports, which would shock people that know me now, but I did play sports when I was very young. My family is like a diehard sports family. So all of us played many sports growing up, and I played probably through freshman year of high school or sophomore year of high school, just, until I realized like I was not that good. I wasn't going to go anywhere with it. I just liked it. I liked the team aspect, but I was not really a fan of running or like sit-ups and push-ups. Like I hated it. I really didn't like that part. I just liked the team, like being around people and the fun side of it. One thing I really liked about sports was all the things that happened around it. And so I think it was my mom that I was talking to, and she said, well, you love doing the theater and the plays, and you do behind the scenes there. Like there's behind the scenes of sport. And that kind of clicked in my head. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to work in sports from behind the scenes, like helping athletes, helping teams, helping, put a game on or helping put things together. So it was in high school where I realized like that's what I wanted to do. And that was the path I was going to follow. So went from there.
Talk to us about your first professional opportunity in sports, and how did you get that opportunity?
Yeah, so I worked 2 weeks for an internship I had to do to graduate high school. I worked for the Baltimore Orioles. I'm from Baltimore area.
Nice.
And I worked there as like a high school intern, but I worked in their promotions team, and I got that position just for a couple weeks because one of my math teachers in high school was very well connected within their organization. And I had made a connection with her. I did it as a senior, but she was a teacher of mine when I was a freshman, and I just kept that relationship with her, and she knew I was very interested in sports. And so when I was reaching out about doing this 2-week internship, it was a no-brainer. She said, well, here's a couple of contacts I have. You should reach out to them. And so it really was just because I had that relationship with that teacher that I was able to get that opportunity. But it was really a lot of fun to work there. And it just showed me that it really is all about who you know, and who can make those connections for you.
Explain to us the type of skill set you have developed that allows you to be able to be successful in your current job as a sports consultant.
Yeah, it's the same. I think that I just mentioned is really building relationships and building connections. That's definitely where the sports world operates, is who knows you and who do you know. It's a very tight-knit industry. Everybody seems to know everybody. And if not, everyone seems to be pretty open to meeting new people and building their network. And I think everybody's kind of on the same page in sports, that that's how things get done. That's how things move forward, is through partnerships and relationships. And so that's one of the things I love, is connecting, catching up with people, building those relationships. And that's really helped me grow and build a company, because I've been able to call on people and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you have any interest in collaborating on this event? Or do you have any interest in collaborating on this project? And the relationships that I've had have really helped me grow and build that, and really build that up to be the company that I have now.
Being a woman in sports, on the business side of sports, what have been some of the challenges you faced, and what are some of the tips you have for young girls who want to work behind the scenes in sports?
Yeah, I would say it's getting better, luckily. But when I entered sports, I mean, when I was in sports management major at Syracuse, there was probably 7 or 8 girls in our graduating class out of, 50, 60 people. And that's just a rough estimate. But it was definitely a boys club. And so I think you just had to really assert yourself and realize that, like, you're competing not only with, the women that you're going to school with, but you're also competing with all of those guys that are much more confident that this is the space they're supposed to be in. And so you have to be equally as confident and not be afraid to raise your hand, not be afraid to shout out an answer, not be afraid to step up to the plate and take on a role or take on a responsibility, and not be afraid to say, oh, I don't know, I've never done that before. I don't know if I'll be good at it. You need to be just as confident as those guys you're sitting in school or next to, or those guys you're working next to say, oh yeah, I can try it. I'll do it. Like, there can't be a hesitation or oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'll be good. So that's definitely one piece of advice I would say. And what helped me was really not focusing on the fact that I was a woman, but just focusing on being the best at whatever I was doing. And so not coming in and saying, oh, well, I'm a woman in sports, which again, I embrace and I love, but I wasn't coming into potential opportunities for jobs or working in a specific field going, well, as a woman, I was coming in and going, well, I'm obviously the best candidate that I can be, that they could consider. And so I think that's something, is just holding yourself to that level and saying, doesn't matter who I am the best candidate on paper, in person, for this position, really helps, because then you're not worried about, uh-oh, am I, it's all these external factors that you can't control. You just need to kind of brush that off and say, nope, I'm prepared, I'm ready, I'm confident, I'm going to take this on and go. So I think that'd be my advice.
What is a typical week like in your position?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a typical week, but really, I start my days off with making connections and reaching out. And so if I have a list, and if I've noticed I haven't talked to somebody in a while, I'll shoot them a note, see how they're doing, see if we can set up a time to chat. I do that on social media. I do that on LinkedIn. I do that on my email. And it takes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but I spend time to do that, so that every morning I'm just actively continuing to build relationships. And then I really do work really hard to time block my schedule. So part of my week is spent touching base with the athletes we're working with, touching base with the groups that we're running, the programs we're running for those athletes. How are they going? How are they doing? How are their goals coming along? What can we do to help? And then we do a lot of events and online events now, given everything going on with COVID. And the other part of my week is business development, creating relationships, creating those events, working with the team members that we have to make sure those are going on smoothly. So I would say that's kind of what a week looks like. It's probably never the same every week, though.
Share some of the strategies that you've used to create opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, I've talked about relationships a lot, so I won't harp on that. But I think another strategy that I've really used is my ability to look at big picture. I think that's very helpful in the industry that I'm in, and in consulting, is you want to be able to look at the end goal and put those pieces together on how to get there. And for some people, that's easier than others. For some people, that's tougher. But I would say definitely like goal planning and visioning is really important in what I do for not only my own business, but for helping people with their dreams and visions and goals, is to be able to learn how to effectively goal set, to learn how to effectively be accountable. Is those are probably the two skills that have helped me the most, because if I can go to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to get this to you on Friday afternoon, I know that my week has to include time to get this project to them or this initiative to them by Friday afternoon. And that also helps me when I'm helping the athletes build that up on their own too, to say, yep, okay, here's how you set accountability. Here's how you create goals. Here's how you build that out. So in addition to building relationships, you have to know what you're working towards. And especially when you're running your own business, you have to be motivated to work every day, because there's nobody else behind you saying, did you get that project done? Did this happen? Did you grow here? There's nobody there to do that. And I'm sure you can relate to, Kiana, as somebody that is, running your own business and your own initiatives. There's nobody checking in at the end of the day to say, how did things go? It's all on you. And so you have to build in accountability and those goals just to keep yourself consistent and showing up every day.
So for students who would like to learn more about consulting athletes or working with celebrity talent, what resources do you suggest that they take a look at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the best resource is looking at people that are in that space working, because I don't know if there's resources out there on how to work with athletes or celebrity clients. I think the best experience is actually going out and doing it, or interning for a company that does that. But there's tons of consultants out there that work with, whether it's athletes, celebrities, and just, in the sports space, from marketing and media to PR to, brand consultants, all the way to, personal trainers to, life coaches, managers of their schedules, of their nonprofit foundations. So there's so many avenues to support somebody that might be an athlete or might be a celebrity or just a company in the sports space. And so I would say, do your research on like, what area do you like, or what area are you interested in? And I'm sure just by going on Twitter or Instagram or Google, you could find 4 or 5 consultants in that space that you could start following and reach out to and say, hey, I'm really interested in becoming a PR consultant for athletes or for, celebrities. What do I need to do? Like, what worked for you? What didn't? Because they're the people that have gone through it. And if you start making those connections, that's really how you get your foot in the door. It's a very who knows who and trust community, not necessarily going to be putting out tons of resumes and trying to pull somebody from a crowd. It's definitely going to be through personal connections. So that would be my recommendation.
Since you work with so many different athletes, what are some of the things that people may not know as far as working with talent that's just always on, on everybody's kind of like view, on everybody's radar?
Yeah, I love that question. That's a really good question. I would say the biggest surprise, I think, for everyone is that every single athlete is so different from the other. So I've never had the same conversation about what their goals are outside of sports. Like, I've never had that same conversation. They have such interests and personalities outside of sports, and I don't think the general public recognizes that enough. We really lump athletes into a category and we say they're an athlete, so that means this, and this. And that's just totally not true once you chat with them and even just have a quick conversation. But I would also say athletes are very, very motivated individuals. They're extremely good at what I was just talking about, of setting a goal and accomplishing it. And they're very open to support, help, and accountability once they realize that that's the key to success. So I would say, I've talked to a lot of employers that love hiring athletes because they're some of the best employees they've ever had. They're hardworking. They put in extra effort. They're coachable. Like, they take criticism because they're used to taking criticism. And so I think people look at athletes in a certain way. Like you said, they're very much seen on camera or on the field or on the court. But behind the scenes, they're just people with different interests and personalities and and goals just like everybody else. And so the more athletes you talk to, the more you realize that there's no one category that they can all fit in other than really, really talented at athletics. That's really the only thing they share, which I think is great. It makes my job a lot of fun.
Can you share any interesting or funny things that have happened in your line of work?
Excuse me. Yeah, I can. So funny things that would happen, I would say is it's always a different day, but I would say something that's interesting is working one-on-one with athletes is always a really fun experience. And I worked for a couple of companies where we also did a lot of work with athletes. And one of the programs we did was an MBA program, a master's program for professional athletes. And that was so much fun because they got to be on campus and really focusing 100% on school instead of on sports in school, like they were, when they were playing in college. And one of the funniest things is one of the athletes in the program, it was while students were on campus that they were there, and he walked by this one student and he just said, "Man, school is really hard. School is so hard. I've never had to put so much effort into only school with like no distractions. And it's really tough." And it was so funny because that student didn't know the athlete, didn't know why he was talking to him. And I think a lot of athletes come in like, students have it easy because they don't have the athletic side of things. And I think, yes, they do. That's very true. But at the same time, they also probably are taking a lot more extracurricular things. They're doing more extra credit work, or they're participating in more student, actual student work for their professors. And so it was funny to see one of the athletes go, "Man, this master's thing is hard, and I don't have like football to go channel my anger or stress or frustration out into." And so that was a really funny story that I'll always remember because it really showed that, everybody has their own grass is greener story, right? Students are saying, "Oh, well, it's way harder to be a student." And student athletes are going, "Excuse me, we have it way harder." And so I think nobody has it easy. So that's one thing that I love. But yeah, I mean, every time I work with athletes, there's always an interesting story. Everybody has their own unique background, but that's one of the funniest stories that I'll always remember.
Lastly, what is the best piece of career advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh, that's a good one. I have a lot of advice I'd probably give my younger self. But the one that sticks with me the most today is don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to stand up for what you want. And don't be afraid to say, "I'm maxed out right now. I can't take on another project," or "This sounds like a great opportunity, but right now I have so much going on." I think I'm one of those people that I don't want to let people down. I don't want to say, "Oh, I can't help you," or "Oh, I can't do this."
Mhm.
But sometimes by taking on too much, you set yourself up for failure, and then everything you're doing turns out 50% effort or terrible. And you want to make sure that you're giving the projects and the time and the effort they deserve. Like, you don't want to be putting 50% effort into things. And I think that's definitely advice I would give myself as a younger age, is really think about what do you want to do and pick 3 things that fit in your schedule to give you that time to relax, because that is really important. And I definitely did not do that enough, and it's still a battle I go through nowadays. So I definitely won't say I've solved the problem, but it's definitely advice I would start thinking about and talking to myself earlier about, is saying, how do I give myself my me time and say no to things that just don't fit, what I'm trying to do.
Now, before we sign off, where can people find you online and on social for Tackle What's
Yes, absolutely. So you can find Tackle What's Next at tacklewhatsnext.com. Very easy. And we're on social media at Tackle What's Next. And you can find me at Danielle Berman _ on Twitter. And you can find me on Instagram at Danielle E. Berman. And I would love to connect with any of you that are interested in learning more about what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Danielle. And thank you, students, for tuning in. We'll see you next quarantine break.